On Mother's Day, I received a card and my daughter insisted I read it aloud in front of everyone. Roses are red, violets are blue. You are a burden. Nobody wants you here. The room exploded with laughter. My name is Grace. I am 74 years old, and that moment became the deepest humiliation I have ever experienced in my life. It was a bright Sunday morning. Sunlight streamed through the windows as I arrived at my daughter Danielle's home to celebrate Mother's Day. I wore my favorite green dress, the one that made me feel elegant despite my age. I carried a small bouquet of fresh flowers and sweets for my grandchildren, my heart full of excitement. "Grandma Grace," my youngest grandchild shouted, running toward me with open arms. I bent down and hugged him tightly. In that moment, everything felt warm and right again. For a few seconds, I forgot the loneliness I had been carrying. Michael, my son-in-law, gave me a brief, emotionless nod before turning away. Danielle walked out of the kitchen wiping her hands on a towel, smiling, but her smile felt distant. "Mom, I'm so glad you came," she said. "We've planned something special for you today." I smiled, believing her words. I sat down on the sofa as the children gathered around my feet. Danielle took out a pink card decorated with childish drawings and placed it in my hands. "It's from all of us," she said. "Read it out loud so everyone can hear." I opened it slowly, admiring the drawings on the front. My heart softened. I thought it was a heartfelt surprise. I began reading in a cheerful voice. "Roses are red, violets are." My voice suddenly stopped. The words inside didn't feel real. "You are a burden. Nobody wants you here. Your time is over. You should leave this house." Signed, Your Family. For a moment, the world around me froze. No sound. No movement. Just silence. Then Michael laughed. It started like a small chuckle, then grew louder, colder. Danielle covered her mouth, but she was laughing too. Even the children began giggling, confused but copying the adults. "Mom, did you really believe that?" Danielle said between laughs. "You should have seen your face." My hands began shaking uncontrollably. The card slipped from my fingers and fell onto the floor. "It's just a joke," she added casually. "Don't be so sensitive. You always take things too seriously." Those words hit harder than the card itself. I slowly stood up, my legs weak, my chest heavy. I should go," I whispered. No one stopped me. No one followed me. No one even stood up. I walked out of the house carrying a pain I had never felt before, not just sadness, but something deeper, rejection from my own blood. That night, I sat alone in my home. The silence felt heavier than ever. I cried until my eyes burned and my body had no strength left. But when the tears finally stopped, something unexpected happened. Something inside me shifted. For years, I had lived for them. Now, for the first time, I started thinking about myself. And as I sat in that silence, memories began to return. Danielle's father had left when she was just 3 years old. One morning, he simply disappeared, leaving behind a short note on the kitchen counter. "I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry." That was it. No goodbye. No explanation. I remember holding a crying child in my arms that night, promising her that I would never let her suffer because of anyone's absence. And I kept that promise. I worked double shifts at a textile factory for years. My hands became rough and cracked from endless sewing and labor. Every extra dollar I earned went into raising Danielle. When she decided she wanted to study nursing, I didn't hesitate. I sold my mother's jewelry, the only valuable things I owned, just so she could go to college. "Mom, are you sure?" she once asked. "Yes," I said. "Your future matters more than anything." During her studies, I cleaned offices on weekends and came home exhausted, my back aching, but I never complained. Watching her study at the kitchen table kept me going. When she graduated, she hugged me tightly. "We did it, Mom," she said. "I couldn't have done this without you." Those words were everything to me. Later, she met Michael. At first, he seemed respectful and polite. When they got married, I contributed $12,000 to their wedding, money I had saved over many years. Then came their house. I gave them $25,000 for the down payment. Then came the grandchildren, and I became their daily caregiver without hesitation. I cooked, cleaned, picked them up, bathed them, and cared for them every single day for years. At first, they were grateful. "Mom, we don't know what we would do without you," Danielle used to say. But slowly, the tone changed. My help became expected instead of appreciated. My advice became interference. My presence became inconvenience. "Mom, you don't have the energy like before." "Grace, you're confused again. Maybe you should rest at home." I ignored it at first, thinking it was just stress or misunderstanding. But things kept getting worse. I was no longer included in family gatherings. Events were planned without me. I would find out through small accidental mentions or social media posts. Once, I discovered a full birthday celebration had happened for my grandson, and I wasn't invited. When I asked Danielle about it, she smiled and said, "It was just a small thing. You would have been bored anyway." But the pictures showed something else, a full house, laughter, guests, celebration, just without me. That night, I cried quietly again. Still, I continued helping. Then came the conversation I was never supposed to hear. I overheard Michael outside speaking on the phone. "My mother-in-law is becoming more dependent. We need to think about long-term options." Options. That word echoed in my mind for days. Slowly, I realized something painful. I was no longer seen as family. I was seen as a responsibility. But what they didn't know was that I was not helpless. Over the years, I had quietly built savings and investments. I owned a property inheritance in the Bahamas, and my financial portfolio had grown without anyone knowing. Almost $400,000, hidden behind my simple lifestyle. To them, I looked like a struggling elderly woman surviving on a pension. In reality, I had been the one quietly supporting them all along. And that realization changed everything. Not in anger, but in clarity. That night, I made my decision. I removed every financial connection I had with them. I stopped automatic transfers. I closed shared accounts. I reviewed my will and rewrote it completely. Everything would now go to a foundation for elderly people who had been abandoned by their families. Then I booked a flight to the Bahamas. Not to run away, but to begin something I had never allowed myself before, a life of my own. The next morning, I woke up differently. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about their needs. I was thinking about mine. I went to the bank and finalized everything. My advisor looked concerned, but I stayed firm. "This is my money," I said calmly, "and I will decide how to use it." Then I went to my lawyer and signed the new will. My grandchildren would only receive anything if they maintained genuine contact with me when they became adults. Not obligation, not guilt, but real connection. Everything else was redirected. No hesitation. No regret. Just finality. When I left the office, I didn't feel weak or lost. I felt awake. Before leaving the country, I wrote letters to my family. Not out of revenge, but truth. I wanted them to understand what they had done, and what they had lost. As I sealed those letters, I finally understood something deeply. I had never been a burden. I had been the foundation they stood on. And now, I was finally choosing to stand for myself.